up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Ben Stewart Podcast. This is a very exciting one. I love being able to bring people on that I have a good relationship with. And this is somebody, his name is Giovanni Bartolomeo. Giovanni's an entrepreneur and a life adventurer. He's a teacher of sorts. He's the founder of Elemental Wellness Studio in Toronto, Elemental Rhythm Breathwork, offering online courses, and the co-founder of the Personal Development School. You can find that at personaldevelopmentschool.com. He launched elementalrhythm.com in 2021, which is an online community focused on breathwork and mind work practices. He has a podcast and a YouTube called The Elemental Awakening. And in 2018, he released a self-directed and produced documentary on plant medicines and psychedelics, of which I was in. I'm really excited to have, there's several conversations that I know we're going to get into that's going to be very inspiring. I want to thank you all for coming back every week, and let's hop into it on the Ben Stewart Podcast. All right, we are back. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming back. The Ben Stewart Podcast. This will be the first one back. I just went on a huge road trip and got a friend that I've known for quite some time, met in the flesh just once. Was it just once?
I believe so. Yeah,
it was just LA that we met.
Yeah,
crazy. Right. And that was years ago. You were going to a Wim Hof thing. Giovanni, thank you so much for being on the program.
Yeah, so excited to be here. Really, really excited to see where this goes. All our conversations don't really have a starting direction, but they go into so many interesting topics, which I love, because I love the depth that you have, the experience. Your curious mind also inspires me to ask more questions and to dive deeper. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, I've always been very thought-provoking. We got Gordo over here in the corner. What's up, Gordo?
Well, glad to be here, guys. Hey, excited. Yeah, there's a wide breadth just from the pre-show talk that I'll throw through a few curveballs in there. So I'm curious to hear where we go with this.
Love them curveballs. So right on, like the first thing I was thinking about getting into, I'll leave the audience hanging on it, is a fast that you did a while back. But I'm thinking of it was a very inspiring fast. So I want the audience to understand that right away. But before that, I actually want to talk about breath work. So back in the day, I can't remember what year that was. That would have been 2016, maybe?
I think it was, around 2015, 2016, yeah.
Okay, crazy. So I was just having my daughter. So anyway, we met up in LA, palled around for a little while. You were going there to a Wim Hof. Was it like just a tutorial or?
Yeah, so similar to the way I met you is also similar to the way I met Wim. I had saw something online, like I was initially probably back in 2012 when I got into your documentaries and was sort of really intrigued and asked questions in a way that my mind wasn't ready for, I guess, or was really ready for, because it just opened up a whole new way of thinking. Even like Ungrip really was the one that was like, oh, okay, like so much different, but so thought-provoking. And I set this intention that, hey, I'd love to meet Ben one day. Like, this guy seems so cool. And I think I reached out once or twice, didn't really hear back from you. You were touring with your band maybe at the time. And the same thing happened with Wim. I was holding these groups in Toronto where we just get together and just like a bunch of people, open-minded people who are trying new things. We play videos or just talk about cool things. I was like, I need something inspiring to share. I found this video of Wim back then, which he wasn't really that popular yet. He had like the TV show that was made about him and a few other things. And I played it, and the same thing. I was like, I really would love to meet this guy one day. And just like setting that intention sometimes and putting it out there and just believing that it's possible is like half the battle of making these things happen. And so contacted Wim when I was working with Collective Evolution at the time. We had a podcast, said, hey, I love what you're doing. I'd love to promote you on our website. I'd love to interview you. He's like, yeah, we became friends. He's like, come to LA. And I don't know how we were connected at the time, but somehow I'd reached out, maybe to be on our podcast, but you were also in LA at that exact same time. And I'm like, hey, let's meet while we're down here. And so that's when I sort of crossed paths with Women in the Flesh and also with you as well. And it was quite a journey for me, the breath work, which I'm sure, you have some similar experiences. We geeked out a bit on cold exposure. I remember you telling me you had that kiddie pool in your backyard and you were just dive in and dive under the ice. And to be quite honest, my initial sort of egotistical mind at that time was like, it would be cool to climb a mountain in my shorts and take a picture and put it on the internet. Like, that's where my mind was going. I'm just going to be like, that guy, this is what all these guys are doing. And, you know, I saw, and what intrigued me about Wim was like him bringing like people up on the mountain with no experience and saying, hey, anyone could do this. And, you know, that's sort of the way I've been living my life, is like, you know, if someone else can do it, that means it's possible for anyone to do it. But he was the real guy that drove that home for me, because he was doing some real crazy shit. Like me, I was like doing a little crazy shit. And going there really changed things for me. But where the big shift happened was when we spent a week in nature. Up in the Colorado Rocky Mountains, in the forest, in the lakes, jumping in, being kids, being curious, freezing our asses off, doing a lot of breathing. And in one breathing experience, you know, which he took us on some deeper dives beyond the Wim Hof method, which was just almost like a holotropic or a transformational breathing style, where we just like have different speeds and we just keep picking it up and breathing. And I was just going through it and just really giving it. I think that's the other thing that people, once you commit to things in life, when you really give it your all, that's when sort of the magic happens. When you're sort of on the fence and unsure, like I'm feeling a lot of that now with making decisions with everything that's going on. But it's like when you just are like, okay, like we're doing this. This is my decision. I'm going all in. And I did that in this breath work, and there was a point where I had this out of body experience where I totally left my body and I didn't know where I was, what was going on. It just sort of dissolved. I remember sort of coming back, almost feeling like a baby or something, and just crying uncontrollably, like weeping, like bawling my eyes out. 30 other dudes here, big, strong, athletic, all kinds of things. I'm just like, whatever. This is just the best feeling ever. And just letting it rip. And I didn't know what I was crying about. It just felt like years of repressing this emotion that I needed to release, which was maybe sadness or whatever, just like this crying. And I just let it out, and I felt good about it, and it felt safe to do that. And that sort of stuck with me. And I was like, what was that? And that sort of led me on this sort of exploration of breathing and curating these deeper experiences with breath, with music, sound, movement, rhythm, to create what now is elemental rhythm breakthrough experience, or elemental rhythm breathwork. And it's bizarre, I guess, in a way, but in a way it's not. That you don't need any substances or things. Just your breath can take you deeper than any of these things. And that's a lot of people share that with me. Like sometimes I'll facilitate like a plant medicine retreat, and the breath work brings them deeper or unlocks more than the actual plant medicine did. And sometimes it's that intimate relationship with the self and allowing yourself to go deep, feeling safe, and just pushing it can do. So yeah, that's a long-winded story of sort of how we met and diving into the breath.
I love it.
That was great.
I love it. You know what it brings up for me, man, is the same kind of thing happened with Wim, with me. And I feel like, Gio, have you ever been to Burning Man?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you experience the synchronicities?
Man, Burning Man was crazy for me. It was yeah, but synchronicities for sure. But it was
okay.
Yeah.
So you know that feeling that it almost feels like it's magic, and like this is defying logic. Am I being punked? What, like, what's happening here? Is this a grand theater just to make me feel like synchronicities are real? And I feel like the entire world is that if you're clued in, and clued in means just like open to the possibilities of what the moment's trying to teach you. So like I forget how it was that I got hooked up with Chris Ryan. He wrote Sex at Dawn and Civilized to Death. And I got on the Tangentially Speaking podcast. Up at his place, he was up in Topanga. It was in this small little room. It was really cozy. Awesome podcast. And then I was leaving, and he was like, yo, brother, I got to run down to the bottom of the hill to grab this other guest. You want to roll with me? And I really just felt like getting back home. And this was one of those moments where I was like, I feel like there's a yes here for some reason. So I was like, all right. So I hopped in the car. We rolled down. I had no idea where we were going. I didn't ask any questions. For some reason, I just got in. And we rolled up to Rich Roll's house. And Rich Rolls comes walking out, and out comes the other guest, which is Wim Hof. And I run into him there. He recognized me from Holland. So the other part of the synchronicity is my wife is Dutch. I was in 2012, I was doing this European tour all over, and I literally was just going to stop in Amsterdam one night. Bada bing, bada boom. I stopped there. I do a talk. I mention ayahuasca. My now wife, Barbara, had done it that morning. We had such a click. And then, so, like, you know, I won't get into the whole litany of things from there, but bottom line is she lived an hour from Wim Hof, and her whole family had been into Wim for quite some time before, like, elsewhere in the world, people were catching on to it. So I got to meet him early on, and he took me training with Alistair Overeem of the UFC, and just all these interesting things. But like, the world is fucking huge, right? You know, supposedly it's, you know, there's 7 billion people wandering around there, and for some reason, like, traveling around, I run into so many people that I know, and that happened all the time at Burning Man. And so I think either Wim Hof is an elemental or some kind of like sprite or spirit, and he's just popping up in our fields to you know, to wake us up, or there really is, like, the Burning Man thing is it. All the synchronicities seem to happen, maybe because whatever life is, whatever the earth is, whatever reality is, that stuff can happen more when you believe it. And that's why I love what you were saying. Like, when you just surrender into, like, I'm having a great time, then the thing you thought you couldn't do before becomes realistic. It's like you're getting over your own hurdle, your own wall. What was that for you in life? Because what was the biggest hurdle and challenge? And go ahead and comment on whatever you were going to comment on there too.
Well, I think, yeah, just to sort of piggyback on that, it's like, I think most people just need to wake up in the morning and just have that sort of like childlike enthusiasm that anything could happen today. Anything is possible. A change can happen at any moment in my life, in the world, in the things that I'm doing, rather than the other mindset, which is like, oh, I'm screwed, life sucks, this is hard, blah, blah, blah. It's like, hey, things can change in an instant, and anything is possible at any single moment. And when you start like tapping more into that and having more awareness, like these things, these Burning Man things, you know, that's just like a cauldron of like, you know, all these people with similar or open minds that are coming together. But the magic is always there. Just our environment, I think, weighs down on us and allows us and blurs our vision for the ability to see that. But the more you sort of break free from that, start living a life of more in flow, more in the moment, being more aware of your surroundings, and just being open to possibility, more possibility enters into your life. And that's what's been my experience. And also reading a book last year, The Surrender Experiment, like it just summed it all up for me, which is like, hey, all this shit's going to happen. Don't try to judge it. Just go with it and see what comes out the other end. When we resist control, have this plan in our mind, it's like, no, it's got to be this way. You keep yourself stuck in that box. And then you're just like, screw it. We're going with the flow. Let's make this happen, or let's just allow things to unfold and not judge, because then nothing is good or bad. You're just experiencing or witnessing everything that's happening, including what's happening right now. It's like, hey, my mind is trying to say, oh my God, end of the world, blah, blah, blah. This is crazy. I'm losing all my freedoms, blah, blah, blah. It's like, wait a minute. Like, we don't know how this thing's going to end. You know, one thing I do know.
Nor do we know what it's teaching us.
One thing I do know, we're all going to die eventually. Right?
Yeah. How do you want to perceive your life up to that point?
Well, do I want this boring movie where it's just like the suburbia life where like, hey, I grow old? Or do I want like crazy cataclysms and like riding out on this burning chariot of fire where it's like, you know, who knows? Like, it's okay, right? Like I'm encouraging or embracing the chaos because it's interesting, I guess, and trying to frame my mind around like, hey, this can feel scary, but it's also an interesting time to be alive. And I believe that we chose to be here at this time because of this, because, you know, it's such a unique point in humanity's history. And also, I think, you know, I'm just reevaluating my beliefs too as we're going through this. Like, what do I really believe in?
I love it, man. Keep it going.
And it's like, yeah, if like we're these spiritual beings, you know, like what a perfect way to sort of test our spiritual fortitude than throwing into a time like this. How are you going to show up? How are you going to react? How are you going to treat the people around you? You know, what are the sort of questions that you have to face as decisions to make as a human in this time in life? And it's like, wow, like this is a really cool test. If I had to design a test, it's like, hey, we're going Earth 2020. You ready for this? Are you gonna dive in? Are you gonna hit that 5-MEO pen, or are you gonna go into like the Earth sphere for 80 years and come out? You know, say, okay, let's do the Earth thing for you. So that sounds like quite a wild trip. We don't know how it's gonna be. It's gonna be intense. I'll tell you that. And it could be anything.
The more I've lived, the more the game metaphor really resonates with me. Right, where we're kind of, you know, you can play multiple games, but you always have this one sort of player playing multiple games, right? And this idea of an avatar, and just I don't think it's a coincidence that gaming and all these concepts of creation and game, there is a natural appeal to a lot of people that's growing more and more. I feel like it's creation within creation with creation, but the key part is not getting too attached to the character you're playing, right? That's the tricky part.
Absolutely.
Jamie Wheel, just interviewed Jamie Wheel from the Flow Genome Project. We were in a Hobbit house in Austin. But he was talking about, it was pretty dope. It felt like we were on dope just being in a Hobbit house. But what I was saying, he was talking about reality tunnels that people hop into. And I'll actually just tell a short little story, because he just sent out this newsletter, and I read his newsletters. I love reading people's newsletters because you get a peek into their mind. And so he just wrote something, and he was just like, these are the 4 kinds of conspiracy archetypes people fall into. And he got so much backlash that he wrote another newsletter afterwards saying, like, guys, I'm kind of being like Oscar Wilde trickster here, like I'm here to push your buttons. And I resonated with that. Right. And it's like, there's something about the reality tunnels that we get in. The story I kind of want to tell, I won't get into names or go deep into detail, but there was somebody today who hit me up, and very much so in the left-right schism, I felt. And within that, like, the only reason I would call that a schism is because of what it did inside of this person in his discourse with me. And basically the only thing I'll share is the grand conclusion, which is that the people on the other side of this line, the only light at the end of the tunnel we're in is that those people, hopefully they get sick and die. And it was a challenge to me, and I noticed the emotional reaction that made me want to go into, which was the oppose what he just said. Like, challenge it, don't let him be that way. Try and help him, give him medicine, fix that error inside him. And the interesting thing was I let it sit for a while, and I breathed through it. And then I kept seeing more and more of what I was grateful for, because what it allowed me to see deeper in that was that the more I talk from a specific framework, right? Like, I'm speaking about X, Y, and Z from the framework of A, B, and C. And if I always stay in A, B, and C, and I never try out E, F, G, or H, I, J, or any of the other platforms that I could be on, then I don't realize that my communication takes on a certain archetype that I didn't sign up for. It just became the path of least resistance for my communication. And then it started closing the door on me possibly seeing the equal humanness in the radically other, right? In the radically different person. I couldn't see the humanness until my friend showed me this is the extreme of the tunnel and the danger of not seeing the other as, as radically different as they are equally worthy of your love and your consideration. Maybe you isolate yourself from them for a while before you catch your breath, but you're here for this. You're here for these moments.
Yeah, I have a great story just from this weekend that sort of like showed me that. And we went to a festival up north in Ontario, music, DJs, family, tents. And a friend of mine that came, his air mattress exploded in the middle of the night. And we had 3 for me, my wife, and my 2 kids that were provided as part of our tent or whatever we had. And so I decided to give them one. So we had to share 2, the 4 of us. My daughter got really upset. I don't think she got upset about the mattress, but she wanted to express herself, saying that I don't put them first, that I'm always working, that I don't have time for her. I always have like these calls that I do, and I'm working, doing podcasts, and like she feels that she's the lowest priority. And so I go on this dad rant trying to convince her, trying to make her understand my perspective for like 30 minutes. Listen, you have to understand I'm working so that we can live a better life, so that we can have all the toys that you want. I do this because of this. So I'm trying to justify my actions and paying no attention to her feelings. And so, and I said, okay, so, and I said, listen, you have to make me more aware of when, because I don't feel I do this, you have to make me more aware of when I'm not putting you first. So then I get invited to this this sauna experience with some of my friends. The kids are with my wife, listening to music, dancing. I go there and they do a little rapé ceremony. So I take some rapé and immediately I flash a vision of my kids. The rapé is showing me, here's a perfect example of where you're at a festival and you're not putting your kids first. You wanted to go to this unique experience with some of your friends doing this sauna sound experience, and you're putting your family second. So I leave there, and then I realize that my daughter only sees it from her perspective. She doesn't understand me. She doesn't understand what I'm doing. All she sees is dad is busy and I'm not first. And I'm trying to force my views on her, saying, hey, you need to understand me. I don't need to understand you. But in that moment, I left everything I was doing right then and there. It showed me that I had to go and say, hey, listen, I want to understand you more. I see now how you see dad from this perspective. You see me not putting you first. And now I'm going to make a point to like, I want to understand how you're feeling. You need to share how you're feeling. So I was like, I just shifted my whole perspective, where I thought I need to make her understand me. And I think what a lot of people are trying to do is make the other understand them without really trying to understand the other. And it doesn't mean you have to agree with them. It just has a place from understanding. And a lot of the conversations I have, which I'm pretty sure what you're alluding to, I'm trying to make them understand me without really trying to understand how scared they are, how uncertain they are, how they've been raised, what their environment is like 24/7, all the inputs that they're getting, which is causing them to see reality through this lens. And then I have to reflect on the same thing with me. It's like, hey, wait, what's directing this movie I find myself in? You know, is it me, or am I being influenced by what I think, what others think, what I want to believe? And am I really allowing myself to be open to sort of be in the seat of the observer? And that's an ongoing sort of challenge for me. And I always got to reflect, like, hey, why do I do the things the way I do? Why do I think the way I do? Is there a program? Am I being influenced? So I feel you 100%. I just had that experience as well. And going back to what Gordo was saying about the game, I agree with that so much as well. And I think that, like, when you're aware, you get these little synchronicities, these one in a millions, which is like the game winking at you, or God, or reality, or the universe, the creator, or your higher self somewhere from like the outside that's coaching you through this experience, saying, hey man, it's gonna be okay. Like, don't worry, it's all good. Where they'll drop a little nugget. It's like, what are the chances? How did I just walk into this person inside the world, like rolled up? And I think they're planted there just for you to like second guess, like, is this even real right now? Are we really doing that? So anyways, two things I wanted to chime in on there.
What's funny about the synchronicities in general is, you know, back to Burning Man, there was, I think, 75,000 people in 2013 when I went there. And like, it was, Barbara wasn't my wife back then, but like, that was literally where we officially started dating. There was something so just magical that had happened that was beyond explanation. It wasn't like anything changed from one night to the next. And there's 75,000 people there. So there's people who knew me from Kaimatica and other stuff that were hitting me up and like, yo, Ben, you're going to Burning Man? Me too. I'll see you there. And I'm like, right. You know, I'll see you there for sure. And sure as shit, the three people that said they were, you know, hey, I'll see you there, I saw them there. One of them I parked right next to. Had no realization until I didn't even recognize him until like he was pointing at me the next morning. I thought he was going to make us leave this little part of the camp. And he was like, Ben Stewart, you made Kaimatica. You gave me a ride home in Toronto. Actually, you might know him, Michael Petrakis.
Yeah, I know Michael.
Yeah.
There you go. So full circle. There we go.
Yeah, totally. And then there was this other guy from Australia that was like, yo, I'll meet you there. And I'm like, yeah, for sure. And then I just saw this one talk about synchronicity. I forget the guy's name. He has the website arguenaked.com, which is totally dope. But
top 5 best website names.
We just wandered in there, looked for a spot where there was an opening. I went and I sat down, and I get nudged on the shoulder. The guy I sit down next to was the guy from Australia, and it happened one more time. Just like randomly, we, you know, two bikes stopped at the same time, and we look at each other and we're like, what, how did we also just stop, not just ride by one another? So there's something about that I think there's a mystical aspect to reality that it's not safe, because for most people who like to be reductionist and who like to have a rational answer for everything, because for the most part, if you have a rational, business-oriented, risk-assessed layout of the rest of your life, then you feel like you can manage and control what's going to come back for you, what you'll be gifted with by life. And there's this thing that's also like surrendering the outcome, but doing the work, but surrendering the outcome. Actually, somebody, Solid Spirit, in the chat just said, it is a bit like making a video with a certain intention based on a mental construct, but right in the middle, the heart suddenly shows you something completely differently than you intended. So like seeing something as like, you intend something to come out of it, but you might be shown, why do you intend that when you could have when this could happen, when you could contribute to this happening? So having that kind of surrender and humility allows you to also maybe acknowledge that, like, not only do I not have it all figured out, but maybe something else has it figured out, and that's the thing that I'm surfing. That's the wave that's carrying me that I've never given any credit to. I just call that life and the way things go.
Yeah, I really resonate with that. When I coach people, or even just my own process, a lot of the times we have this sort of vision of where we want to get to, and we think it's like this linear path. But usually what we want, well, there's what we think we want, and then what we actually want to feel can sometimes be totally different things. But the pathway to either usually involves a deconstruction of your current reality. But no one wants to go through that. No one wants to sort of bear witness to things falling apart, like your house burning down. It could be the most liberating thing that ever happens to someone, but in the moment, it's the worst thing ever. And no one ever plans for that in their 10-year plan. But when you surrender to the process and you have that awareness, okay, like, this is what's happening right now, we have to go with this. It's a hard thing to embody and practice, but it's something that I've seen time and time again, only looking back, saying like, oh, these hard moments were actually the most important and beneficial things that have ever happened to me, but I hate going through them. And then like when I get into like a really like high point in my life where things are just cruising, it's like I know something's around the corner that's going to sort of just like shake things up a bit, throw a spoke in the wheels, because it's time to grow a little bit more. And I never want to welcome it, but when it comes, it's like, okay, like this is my dharma. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is part of my path that I could have never planned and made any 10-year plan. And I've tried the 10-year plans, 5-year plans, these vision boards, and they never happen the way you plan them to happen.
Nailed it.
Maybe year one starts a little bit going. And so now I just focus on like, how do I want to feel? Because that's something that's tangible that I know. And I know when I feel that way. And so sometimes I realize like all these things that I thought were necessary to make me feel that way, I don't even need those things. So I can move into that feeling by having conversations with friends, by having an experience, by traveling, by getting out of my comfort zone, doing something different, where I don't need crap or material things or money to then buy these experiences, where most of the time you have access to it already. And then when you are feeling the way you don't want to feel, it's like being able to sort of bear witness to that and see the power in the emotions that are just trying to guide you. It's like, hey, there's a program here that no longer serves you. Okay, so let's not push it away. Let's bring awareness to it. Let's take a deep breath. Let's change our thought patterns. Just say, hey, what's this trying to show me? And is this true? And if it's not true, it's like, okay, like, thank you for the awareness. Thank you for being a powerful teacher. I acknowledge you. And I don't need to sort of deal with that anymore. I don't need to give strength or power to that. I'm going to move somewhere else in a different direction and refocus my energy into something that I want to sort of bring awareness and energy to.
You know what I love is you're talking about Wim Hof as somebody who's like, he's showing people that you can do what you once called the unimaginable. Like, oh, I could never do that. And he's like, bullshit, breathe, motherfucker. Like, come on. Like, you not only have this inside you, but it wants to come out.
He's showing it in such a very visceral way. I think that's what's so powerful. I mean, you see this dude half naked on the top of a mountain or an ice bath, even if you're the most skeptical person, you're like, what's going on here? And I thought this guy would have hypothermia and be probably dying by now from what I'm looking at. And then the scientists coming in and verifying and going, yeah, he actually is physiologically able to control and regulate things we thought were automatic and adjust temperatures internally. What's going on here? We don't really know. But and that's why I think it was so important for him when he did get that verification from science to go, yeah, there is some real serious temperature changes going on here, and we had to reassess everything we've known.
Totally. I mean, things that they didn't even expect. which was, they injected people with E. coli,
Yeah.
and the same breath work that helps you get warm. I shouldn't say it helps you get warm. Actually, what it does is it helps you command a part of what they call the autonomic nervous system when previously you weren't able to. And I think that comes through the hypnagogic state you can put yourself in to help you believe more of what you're capable in, rather than the conditioning of the outside world and the times we're living in. And you're definitely right, Gordo. Like, the science made it more real for other people. So, like, I always go back to Roger Bannister. He broke the 4-minute mile when all the scientists, all the doctors were saying impossible. Your lungs would collapse, your knees would cave in, like all that kind of crap. And he did it. He survived. And then the next 3 months, somebody else did it. And then now thousands of people.
Would that be considered the 100 monkey effect, or is that only when
I think that's
when it spreads without independent of one another to different places?
That's probably more of that.
Okay.
And I think that has some merit to it, that concept. Right. This is more of the placebo. It's like the superhuman placebo, where it's like, if you who'd have thought you could teach yourself to echolocate if you go blind, or you don't even have to go blind. So like Daniel Kish went blind at the age of 5. He's riding bikes now and drawing things that he's seeing as he echolocates. Oh, by the way, he can see around curves. You kidding me? Like, that's a superpower. Like, there should be comic books about this.
Well, there is. It's Daredevil, right?
Right. Well, exactly.
Real life.
Exactly. Taught himself to echolocate. And then a woman who's not blind, Ellen Boudreau, but she's on the autistic spectrum, also taught herself to echolocate. She's an incredible musician and incredible at math, So, like, there's something dormant within all of us that's beyond what we could have imagined before. But I think maybe the dark path, I wouldn't even call it the bad path, the dark path, the path of like a harder lesson for you to learn, is by learning that you can command stuff before you realize what the impact of it means to other people, to the environment. Like, that's, I think, the basis of all the stories of genies and stuff like that. Be careful what you wish for, because, by the way, you're a magician, albeit maybe immature and unaware of what you're capable of. But that genie is inside you. Be careful what you want to manifest, because, by the way, you've been manifesting it all along. So beware of the thoughts and the words and the categories that you place on things, and also know when you can use this category as a way to communicate, but let it go every now and then. Dissociate from it so you remember what it's like. I know a lot of people that went deep down any rabbit hole you could imagine, eventually noticed the byproduct of it, which is, I found it harder to talk to other people. You ever notice that? Doesn't matter what rabbit hole. It could be conspiracy, or it could be spirituality, or it could be something metaphysical, something that somebody knows there's merit to, but then they get so locked in it that they start losing the ability to have the casual, normal, conventional, disassociated conversations. So, I mean, shit, there's a lot. There's a lot.
It's
to
like
riff
anything.
On there.
Yeah, anything you get passionate about. I mean, I can remember when I first got into quantum physics, as much as when I fresh out of college was into finance, and I was like, this is all I want to talk about. It's in the industry, they call it a green thumb, and I think, especially, I think the balance that I'm currently at in my life now is balancing basically, and we've talked about this kind of before, Ben, but the more heady concepts or spiritual concepts with the more grounded physical concepts, right? So the real life heavy duty stuff happening in the world with current events, with also the spiritual and new age concepts and things happening that are so much bigger than this sort of whole ego Gordon, the world of what's happening in what we call, day-to-day reality. And so I think both are important, but there's a balance to it all, right? It's all about balancing this middle path, and I've been on both extremes. I think that's one of the best ways to get empathy and is to really kind of immerse yourself. And I wouldn't say necessarily myself, but I've been around or seen both extremes. And I mean, you as well. I mean, you can speak to this, Gio. What has been sort of your journey like, and where you're at now, having walked in various worlds, and where do you kind of see yourself moving forward, or media, or what you're doing?
Yeah, I think like initially, the conspiracy path, probably around the time I was watching thematic. I don't know if we consider that conspiracy anymore or not. It was probably in that genre at one point.
Yeah, I call it a mind fuck with a little bit of everything.
And so like I remember like exactly what you're talking about, looking into it, wanting to share with people, but then people not ready for it and judging me for it. Then I was like, okay, maybe I shouldn't talk about this. It's like too out there. Which put me into this, like, so when you isolate yourself, and this is, I just saw it interesting to talk about that today, what's happening now. When you sort of make like so much uncertainty and isolation, people start losing their minds a little bit. It's like they use that when they try to sort of make someone go crazy. Like they put someone in like the hole or something, like isolation plus like uncertainty and like all of this like decisions and flip-flopping of information. So when you go down some of these conspiracy paths, or even spirituality, because there is no real answers in there, it's just a lot more questions and you feel sort of isolated. It can be very challenging, but that's what sort of pushed me to the point of questioning all my reality, feeling like I was losing touch, and then really diving deep into spirituality. So it was a catalyst for me, and it's not for all people, but for a lot of people, I've seen it go that way. And then sort of got to a point where, you know, especially even with like psychedelics, that's what sort of came next for me, going like doing ayahuasca in Brazil in 2013, which was not early by any standard, but for my community where I live, like no one had heard about ayahuasca in 2013. And coming back and wanting to share with everyone like what I found and how amazing it was. Them looking at me like I had 3 heads, like, hey, don't say that too loud. People are gonna think you're crazy. It's like, whoa. And then like I was doing a lot of business at the time in like the real world, we'll call it, or like the business world, where like this was like, you know, like very conservative people, older people. And I was about to launch this documentary, and I was like a lot of fear around that. And I was just like, you know what? Like if people don't want to talk to me because of this, then probably people I don't want to deal with either. I don't want to talk to because they're not open-minded. They know who I am as a person, but because I'm interested in something, they're gonna like cut me off completely or think or judge me. And so I said, you know what, I'm just going to be who I am. I'm going to speak openly about the things that I do and the things that I'm into, and we'll see who that attracts into my life and who it sort of pushes away. And I think a lot of times, a lot of us are out of harmony because we're pretending to be someone we think everyone else wants us to be. And then we're attracting those people who don't really like us for who we are. We keep those people close in our lives. But really, we're evolving as humans. And as you change, you know, your people around you are going to change, but they're only going to change if you're setting off that signal of like who your true self is or who you really are. So once I just started talking openly about all these things, yes, some people right away ended up sort of distancing, but I surrounded myself with all these new amazing people that were more open-minded, and not necessarily like-minded, open-minded, so we can have a conversation. They can challenge what I believe in, and have their own beliefs, and we can have these conversations openly without judging each other or saying who's right or wrong, and helps me to sort of get more perspective. And that sort of changed me out of this bubble where everyone thought the same way. Everyone was just like, this is how it is. This is what we're doing. We're gonna, you know, drink beer on Sunday, watch NFL football, and then, you know, on the weekends we're gonna go party at clubs, and we're gonna try to make as much money as possible. And, you know, like this old lifestyle, which what I thought was reality, you know, ended up, you know, it's still reality for some, and it's still part of my reality because that's who I was. But it allowed me to sort of, once I started being open with what I was into, just open up a whole new paradigm for me in life. And it was hard, but that's what it sort of led to. I don't know if that answered your question, but that's sort of how I interpreted what you were asking as far as what the process has been like for me. And it continues to be that. Like I'm an open book, and the more I share and the more I hear other people, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try that. And it's led me to some really interesting experiences and amazing conversations.
For sure, man. I mean, it allows, and I was literally experiencing that like an hour ago, putting up some new Ben Stewart, some BSP clips, and it was finishing off our UAP series, and it was a little more fringy stuff, and all my friends and family kind of know me as that guy who's into this stuff, but I was still having some real anxiety nerve. I'm like, oh man, this is gonna be a little weird, and I like, this is more public facing and people are gonna know, but like, you know, fuck it, man, like whatever. And I was just like, you know what? If I gotta remember, I think Ben Brown was talking about this in our last pod, but I was like, you know, the more I fucking own it and I'm vulnerable, the more it allows others to be vulnerable. And I just gotta, you know, push through that weirdness and anxiety. And if, some girl I go on a date with looks it up and I'm like, oh yeah, you know, let's talk about this. Like, who cares? Whatever. Let's go.
Keep being a good person. Like through it all, like just be a good person. Yeah, you know, because when they start seeing you for who you are, like then like they'll look at all these things like, wow, this is a really level-headed good person. And I think like in my community, because I was doing well in business, they looked at me differently than if I was just not doing that. So they would sort of still be attentive to what I had to say. But ultimately, you know, how my wife accepted the ayahuasca was she saw a positive change in me. I was more loving. I was more compassionate. I didn't get angry as much. And I think through all these things, when you tell people, like, you smile and say, hey, listen, like, I love you, you know, like, it's okay. Like, I care about you, you know, we're still friends, you know, it's like, it drops those boundaries, rather than the old me was like, I got to prove that I'm right. I got to prove that all these things I'm talking about is right and you're wrong. Or you don't know what you're talking about because you don't understand what I know. Right. And it's like, when I shift from that, saying, hey, listen, it's okay. Like, I still love you either way. Like, this is just what I'm doing right now, or this is what I'm into, or this is what I've been experiencing. And I can tell both you guys are great guys, you know, and the more you just bring that, hey, I'm a good person and I'm going to be a good person, you know, it's okay. Like, they'll accept it more. That's been my experience anyway.
You're welcome to the party.
Yeah, well, for sure. And what I love about this is, like, what it's bringing up for me is that was a very similar inroad for me to awakening. I could say that it might have started when I was 13, 14. Like, admittedly, I started doing psychedelics at a young age, and also got into Taoism. And for so many people, I remember the reason why I did it mainly was because, of course, I wanted to feel altered. I wanted to know what that felt like, but I didn't feel like doing the opioids. I didn't feel like doing, like, you know, pain reduction, you know, or even like the cocaine. There was something I was really into. I was like, I want mushrooms. Like, it's from the earth. Like, it's very old. Let's give that a go. And that could have been where I started, but conspiracy actually was when I felt my calling. I felt it. I never felt it in sports. I felt it in music. I take that back. I felt it in music as soon as I found music and poetry. But then that kind of also feeds into, when I found conspiracy, I didn't just find, like, you know, something ranting about pedophilia and, like, very dark hate spewing. It was Zeitgeist by Peter Joseph, which was well done. It had a good soundtrack. It was a logical train of thought. You know, there's a lot we could argue and debate about with it, but it was a logical train of thought. It was global. You know, it wasn't about just 9/11 or just RFID trips. It had this chips. It had this whole, like, you know, look at your reality. It's different than you think. Oh, and by the way, you're not going to see my name anywhere in this film. Plus, you know, it was anonymous and it was free and it was well done. So it broke a bunch of rules, and that allowed it to supersede people's, like, red flags. And I saw it on a plant medicine. And so like, conspiracy never once scared me. Never once. It still, to this day, has never once scared me. It has always showed me exactly the nature of the landscape that I'm meant to now start embarking upon. And as much as there's certain ideas that I had back in the days of Esoteric Agenda and Kymatica that now I'm like, all right, I'm glad I kept reading. I'm glad I balanced it upon other ideologies. But I owe a lot to conspiracy. And if you think of what is conspiracy, it's an extreme, according to, you have to reference it to what is conventional, thinking that even Jamie Wheal and some people that I think are some of the smartest cats around with self-improvement, self-discovery, that newsletter that Jamie Wheal sent out, he was basically pigeonholing all of conspiracy theory like this. And I was like, I just emailed him today, or maybe I didn't hit send because I was wondering if I should or not. But I remember thinking the whole point of it was like, dude, you're right on, but there's room for improvement right here. When you take a whole group of people that you've probably only met like 0.001% of, and you put a label on all of them, you got it wrong. You got part of it wrong. And but I love that part of it, you know, and I love that there are these other platforms of which can bring us into what's the important thing. This is why I would almost say is like, I've been rehabbing off of conspiracy as being the singular frame of reference by which I communicate my reality. Because when you do that, you're always coming from, there's something horribly wrong, and I can point at people that are the worst offenders of it. And I realized, I was like, that's not efficient for what I know I'm meant to be doing here. I'm meant to be moving people. And so part of that is awakening them. But another part of that is conspiracy today is not conspiracy circa 2007, 2008. It's different. So people are more emotionally charged now. And So I want to say that was a very interesting, and psychedelics was the next thing I got into
Well,
after that.
I'm curious actually, Ben, how would you define conspiracy? Because I'll give you first what I think is more the sort of the objective one you'd read on a Google or, in a standard dictionary. It's a group of powerful people colluding to commit a crime, essentially, right? I mean, is that kind of how you approach it? And for a long time, that's not a very crazy thing when you kind of put it that way. But it's
that's
certain
business.
Right. I mean,
the corner market, you keep things secret, you do backhand deals, and you level the playing field in your favor.
Yeah, crony capitalism.
And you don't have to, it's not built into the system or the infrastructure. You don't have to understand the environmental or external impact of that. You don't have to factor that into your business. Business is just what business is. Even Charles Eisenstein is like, the fact that there is a cost to shipping oranges from California to Pennsylvania, the reason why they're still so cheap is because they're not factoring in the impact on the environment and the impact on many different sectors, which would make those way too expensive to buy. So I use the term conspiracy theory as the colloquial kind of cultural way that we use it, things that are taboo to talk about. And that taboo thing to talk about is that there is any organization to the ill effects on the earth and people that are happening. It's all just our ignorance and ineptitude. If you're not a conspiracy theorist, that's almost like one of the only things you can get to, or that it's all mythically happening and I do believe this, that there is a mythological level to it. There's an archetypal level to it, and it is being orchestrated by something that's not existent in any one human, but fractally throughout all of us. So when I say conspiracy theory, I mean there's a bunch of ways of looking at it, but I'm basically meaning the brick wall between people allowing themselves to believe that anything that's happening that they don't like is at all organized. It can only be explained away by ignorance and ineptitude. That's my explanation of it. And I would love to hear yours, actually, Gio.
I love that. And I agree that I think that no matter what you believe is going on right now, I think beyond all the role players in the experience, there is a greater force at play. And, if humanity needed to evolve and they were dragging their feet, there would have to be some sort of force to push them to evolve and grow. And, maybe what we seem as a conspiracy theorist is this dark cabal. Like, that's just the role they're playing for humans to evolve, to stand up, to break through any fear. And maybe that's when sort of the game ends and things just shift in a crazy way. I heard this somewhere. I think it was on another podcast, but it's interesting, the connection is that conspiracy, the Latin root word is from spira, which is to breathe. And way back in the day, apparently, so the story goes, and I haven't verified this, but people would get together to do breath work, and they'd be breathing together. And they would have these mystical experiences where they would connect with what they thought was God or a higher being. And the church didn't like that very much. So they'd have to hide and breathe together in these sort of like hidden places. And the church called it a conspiracy. They were breathing together against the church, and it was not allowed. And they became conspiracy. The whole word conspiracy came from that. So I think that's an interesting story that makes a lot of sense to me. I like to tell it just in breathwork class because it gets people excited about the potential of breathing together. And there is something about breathing in a group versus breathing alone that amplifies the experience. But I think as a rule of thumb, I would just say conspiracy is just sort of any narrative that's away from the accepted mainstream, like something else is going on that is not actually being told or admitted to. So it could be anything, It could be
secret. Yeah.
It's just something that is different from what we're being told. So someone is telling a story of how things are. And if I believe otherwise, then it's a conspiracy. It's not accepted by the mainstream. But there's been many conspiracy theories that have been proven to be true. And then they sort of fall into a sort of weird sort of state where people may not admit it fully that, hey, that's what's going on. But I also think there's ways to explain things that make it, that blurs the reality. And for example, I saw a documentary on World War II, and it painted a different picture from what the story told me, and it made me question reality. I was like, wait a minute, like I didn't really believe it, but it was so compelling that they can use similar events put a different narrative behind it and show a different outcome or a different perspective. And I was okay, like, what is the truth? You know, what is really true? And even like right now, I've heard so many theories as far as like what is going on, what is really happening, who is really behind it, you know, where a bat soup would sound like a conspiracy theory, you know, when it's a real narrative, which is like kind of weird. Like, you know, a bat soup in a wet market sounds kind of weird to me, right? My spidey sense goes off, but it's a mainstream narrative. Anything other than that, say this is a conspiracy theory. And I think, you know, we're I don't really want to get into that topic too much, but you know, it could be anything. So I think anything going away from the narrative, I think there's a storyteller that controls a narrative, that this is the story we're going to tell. And then maybe just being creative and believe in something else. Maybe believe in wizards and dragons, and, you know, and like volcanoes are like, you know, the breath of a dragon that's just waiting to come out, and who knows, right? And we can believe that's to be true or not. There's no really way to prove it, but, you know, I can believe anything up.
And even if you're not using the term conspiracy theory, we have these new vernaculars, like the term third rail, right? It's a big one being used nowadays, where if there's anything that is in some way going against a certain mainstream narrative at some point, it's third rail, right? I just was listening to a bunch of Brett Weinstein and Heather, his wife, on Joe Rogan today, and it's a lot about what they were discussing was sort of the main core overall theme of that podcast. I recommend. And something I wanted to hit on earlier that I think was a key thing they were also talking about to tie that in is this idea of dehumanizing people, right? On the left and the right. You know, this is something that, you know, to tie into this idea of any sort of concerted group of, you know, we know there are things we know for sure with market consolidation and very fewer companies having more. Now, is it a back shouty room of certain people? We don't know for sure on that. We do know there are certain meetings of Davos and World Economic Forum and these, you know, CFR, et cetera, but the amount of coordination is always sort of the hard part to prove in any way. But even if you're not even needing to go and stretch it down there is always this question of who benefits in whatever way, when whatever's occurring, right? And right now, when I always look at so much division and this dehumanization of the other, who benefits? Well, it's somebody who wants to have the masses divided, right? And, you know, and this is, you know, Sun Tzu, you know, Empire 101 going back to as early as times are. So a key thing that I was always, you know, stick to in keeping all this in mind, what we've talked about, is keeping an open mind as things continue to progress, as new information comes in, not being too close, holding things too close to chest with certain beliefs, but also not being afraid to speak my truth, and really trying to unify versus divide in whatever I'm doing, whether it's a micro conversation with somebody or a macro. And if it's somebody who's so heated and so just like not even trying to listen, then I'll have to just be like, this is literally not even the art. All right, much love, brother, but I'm going this way, or let's talk about the weather or sports, you know. But if it is someone that's willing, then yeah. But I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on that? I feel like that is sort of the key. That's such a huge thing that I just hear blaring right now more than ever. Is we need people to unify. We need to build bridges. Like, there's so many things creating, you know, designed to be going the other way.
Yeah, I think 2 points that sort of came up while you're saying that. It's like, one is like, once you start disbelieving in the narrative, the mainstream or the story, it really means we don't know what the truth is. And that means it doesn't necessarily need to be negative. It could be anything. And so it's just much a probability of things are going to end up in our worst nightmare as they could be our wildest dreams. You know, and I think the more collectively we think about, hey, like I was talking about earlier, going from point A to B, in order to get to a utopian society, a humanity that's free of greed and capitalism and waste and killing and murder, like this old system has to completely get destroyed. Like there's no other way. And it feels like it's imploding on itself. And there's this amazing track from Darpan called Metamorphosis. And it talks about this transformation, this light hitting the earth and how this DNA is activating. And, you know, we're transforming as humanity. And there's going to be a process of the dark times, the process of upheaval. And every time it gets this track, I've listened to this track of medicine a few times too, you just feel this, I do not want to go through that, but I know that I have to, you know, I know it's coming. And I was like, maybe this was it. Maybe like 10 years ago when you see these riots, okay, this is it now. Okay, maybe now this is really it, you know, like, and maybe it's going to get even worse. And it's just to be present through this whole process, because it's a process that needs to be undertaken. Rebirthing is a magical thing, but before the birth, it's like this process of like, oh my God, am I going to die? Like this pain and uncertainty. And if we're going through that collectively as a humanity, like maybe this is what it feels like. maybe this is that moment. And when you think about like movies and all the things we've looked at, we talked about like superheroes and comics. Before the amazing ending, what happens? It feels like we're gonna lose. It feels like, hey, there's no way we're gonna get up from that. There's no way Superman's gonna come out of the rubble. There's no way. It gets got to get right to that point where people are like, okay, fuck it. Sorry, I don't know if I can swear on this. I apologize if I can.
You're good.
But like, it's okay. I give up or I surrender, and like, let's see what happens now. Let's move forward. Let's do this. So you get past this point, and maybe that's where we are collectively, and more people are waking up. More people are been locked up in their house. Say, hey, like, I can't live like this anymore. I need to change my ways. I need to go and experience, appreciate nature. Or like I've seen way more people go outside of nature in the last year than I have in my whole life. Like we'd go up to like there's a park, Algonquin Park. I've seen cars, lineups, people outside just experiencing nature. If you think that not gonna have an impact on their consciousness, it is.
Yeah.
And some people are falling the other way, but there's something happening. There for sure something is happening collectively as humanity.
Yeah, giving birth is painful.
We don't know how it's going to end. That's the interesting part.
Yeah.
That's also like, to even try and put words around how it's going to end, you have to frame it in a certain way. And we don't know if that framing it causes others to frame it that way. I noticed that when I started, speaking about a lot of topics that are third rail, I still get a lot of emails from people saying like, I get a lot of anxiety watching your news show. And I say like, I can't say that I don't understand, but there's, have you tried to ask why like without joking, like, why do you keep coming back to it? There's something in the friction that's potentially more worth it. And that's not about something that I'm doing. It's something that you're allowing, because you can go somewhere else and maybe that would trigger the same frequency inside you. But that frequency has a form of medicine. And like anyone who's done a plant medicine, I'm not saying plant medicines are the way. I've never actually said that. What I do like is that plant medicines reliably show you something that I think most of humanity needs to see more of more often. And part of that is that moment that you're talking about, Gio, is that surrender, that moment where, okay, I know this is taking all I've got.
Yes.
Like, I don't want to go, but this is taking all I've got. So rely on the things that have always been there for you. Breathe.
Yes.
Breathe. Remember, do not, this is, like, I remember many times, there was one time I wanted to break my finger because I was going through something so terrifying. And I was like, Ben, this doesn't need to be harmful. You just need to witness. You don't need to do anything right now. You just need to witness. And I think that's what you're saying too, is because really when we're saying things are falling apart, what are we talking about? We're talking about the demographic of people who primarily put their emotions out online for many different reasons in many different ways, but that's not an accurate ratio mirror image of what the world is. Yeah. So most of us come to the conclusion that things are falling apart because of the way it's filtered through technology and the people who are most vocal. And there's something about that where I feel like we are getting to a point in humanity where back in the day, you have these stories where one person in an entire village sets off on an epic journey, like Frodo. He's the one person in the entire world that has to go on this epic journey. Oh, but friends are going to go with him. Okay, so like, what was it, 12? Or
Fellowship?
7, something like that.
Yeah.
9.
We're going to get grilled by some people.
Totally.
Bring it. You're Tolkien.
So you don't know what you're talking about. But anyway, like, we don't know, and we don't have a frame of reference in civilization today for when 1 out of every 3 people are a Frodo going on an epic journey. And I feel like that's what a lot, like the awakening, everyone's like, oh, the awakening is going to be so glorious. Like, I can't wait for it. Like, no, it's happening. This is part of it happening.
I'll even say every one person is a Frodo. Every single person is a Frodo. It's when they have the courage to take that journey, to walk out that door and say, okay, like, I'm gonna step.
That's why we're here.
Out.
That's why we're here.
I'm gonna step out. That's why we're here. And you always have the opportunity to like be the star in your own movie, and whatever that means to you, whether it's changing your life and going to the other side of the world, whether it's standing up for what you believe in, whatever it is. But moving past that discomfort, that fear, where in your mind, like, hey, like something's out of alignment here. I just need to have the courage to do something different. And, Terence McKenna thinks that like nature rewards courage. And every time I've remembered that in a scary situation and sort of leaned into it, it's always worked out. It's always shown me something. I've learned something. I've had a breakthrough. And I think that's what life is. Everyone has their own sort of door to step through, something that's unique to them, that's challenging in its own way. And the whole purpose is for you to sort of get that opportunity and take that chance. And some people may go their whole lives with never doing it. And they probably sort of get reinserted in the game somewhere, maybe a different time zone, but they get that same opportunity, that something's going to just present a challenge for them.
Yeah.
And if you look back through history, like the world's always been crazy.
Yeah, we do idolize, like, oh, remember Atlantis? It was great. And it's just like, I remember reading about it just like you do. And some people, I'm not going to say, there are some people like, but for the most of us, we're all assuming there's a part in history that was different than today because of stuff we had to read, now primarily online. And a lot of the times is that my job to deconstruct something that I would never be able to get to the bottom of, but I got to champion it anyway? Or I love the medicine that you said earlier. What about trying relentlessly to become a good person? Just bring goodness. What does that mean? That means when everyone around you is going crazy, like, and I want to get to this. You've experienced hunger before. You did this exceptionally long fast. But not many people know what famine feels like. And when I say not many people, I mean people that have computers and are probably listening to this right now. There are people alive today that surely know what famine feels like. But like, we don't know what it's like when everyone around us is literally going nuts and in their fear bubble. So in a moment where things are crescendoing and the ceremony is really kicking off and people are starting to get anxious, how far is this experience going to take me? Will I be able to handle it? And you realize you're like, this isn't about me. It's more about what I can do for them than it is what I can do for me in this moment. And that's why I love COVID-19. I said this in my last Waking Infinity, like 2020, 2021, the challenge itself is what brought up seeing people, the best come out of people, creativity coming out of people. And it's hard to say, like, oh, well, do you believe we need to start wars then so we could advance medicine? And no, absolutely not. There's more creative, ingenious ways rather than creating harm to create good. But I think today we don't have enough examples. We don't really have enough examples of people who are influencer status, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but influencer status that are really, really walking that middle path and showing like, I'll take you and I'll take you and I'll love you just the same. I know you don't like one another. I know that could make you think that I'm the enemy, but regardless, I'm here in service. And when you notice that, like, have you ever been so riled up in a conversation and that one person just had to say that one thing and it wasn't even what they said, it was just the presence they brought? Or maybe they just put a hand on your shoulder and you remember, okay, breathe, calm down. This isn't about terrorizing people with my ideology. There's something else happening in the room that I need to quiet down to hear, right? That's where I think the solution is. There's something quieter that's happening now. And the ones who are tuning into it, they're not as loud online, but they're super loud in the field. And I want to know from you, Gio, what do you see? Like, we're illustrating where some of the hiccups are between ideological camps and stuff like that. What do you see as a very real 3D way that solutions can start becoming systemic?
Oh, that's a very difficult question, but I think ultimately the most cliche and drawn out answer throughout all histories, the answer is always love. It's just really tapping into that feeling of love and having compassion and not trying to judge whether this is good or bad or right or wrong, and just sort of being there in support. And what I found has been the most helpful right now, like what we're doing here in Toronto, is creating community, men's groups, online calls for support, just to allow people to be seen and heard and sharing how they're feeling. We've had groups get together with people who some are vaccinated, some are unvaccinated, some are pro-lockdown, some are anti-lockdown, and just allowing people to share like what they're feeling, why they're scared, and what what's going on, and just having a place of compassion, not trying to judge. It's hard because immediately people want to take a side because of, I think it's the politics that are trying to divide people right now, where it's like you're either on this side or you're on that side, good or bad, right or wrong. And it's like just remembering that like we're all human, and that's not a clear action step, but for me it's like trying to like always understand where people are coming from and just trying to show up in a place of love and not from fear. And I try to ask them, like, are you making your decisions based in fear, or is it something that you feel is true in your heart? And if you're making it from fear, like, where's that fear coming from? Who's putting that fear on you? Is it your own fear, or is it coming from somewhere external? And try to get people to be just more self-aware and like to try to tap into love. Like for me, what got me through the last year was like, I made a commitment, and I'm so proud of myself because this was a hard one, is to meditate for 1 hour every day. And I did 200 days in a row. And for me, that was like, I thought 30 days would be impossible. I got 2 kids. And what I found was, somewhere around like the 60-day mark, all the noise started going away. Like it was there, but it didn't affect me the same way. It didn't matter what everyone was saying. It was like, okay, like I'm just here. I'm here at this time. And, things aren't going to happen. And beyond this, things are still going to happen. So I'm just going to show up and be present and not try to be reactive, and try to be compassionate and live from a place of love, like lead with love, and however I can in my community, at my business, with my family, and you realize that life is short. Accepting that we're going to die one day, maybe it's because of COVID, maybe it's when I'm 100 years old, but it's going to happen. So like every day now is a blessing. And how do I want to show up and live those days? Because every day living in hatred or anger or fear is a wasted day, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question, but does. Like it's more like a mindset to try to be in, because that's what changes it for you. That changes your whole outlook on the world. It stops everything because it stops for you. Because now you can live from a place of love and acceptance. Like, okay, like I'm okay now, right? And so like when your perception of the world changes, it actually changes, because the way you see the world is what changes. Sorry, you were gonna say something there. I didn't mean to.
Well, I love it, and what that brought up for me was something that Kimberly Gamble said one time. And I asked her, I was like, so what is the real action steps moving what you see as being the solutions into the world? How do you bring it to the world and everything like that? And, oh, no, I'm sorry. She's doing that part. What I said was, when other sectors of your model, because the Thrive movement has a whole model to it, when other sectors start growing on their own, like what do you feel would be like their action steps? How do we, is there a blueprint? Is there a formula? And she was like, Ben, I'm so in love with the mess of freedom. Like if you do the right thing and you do it all the time, and others around you are inspired by that, you can't orchestrate what's going to save us all. You can't. Like, stop trying to orchestrate it. Having plans is good. What is it? It was from World War II, the British Prime Minister. What was his name?
Churchill.
Yeah, he said, what is like something about plans? Like plans will never. Plans are laughable, but they're also invaluable, right? There's something about making the plans that pushes the ball down the field anyway. And it was almost like you were saying, like, if there's something that you think you want and you got to go for it, even if deep down inside it's not what you want, there's something about either deconstructing your reality or just moving along the path that will tell you deeper. It'll give you deeper language. Is this what I really wish to bring to the world? And I find that there's a lot of people that have like the to-do list. They've monetized it. They've business modeled it. They've turned it into a thing that's like, in 90 days, we could have blah, blah, blah. And probably all of it is true, but will it happen? Will people feel that thing that you felt with Wim Hof, where you're just complete surrender? Will it happen? There's a lot of solutions that could happen, but like, will it? And I guess just to finally echo what I heard you saying was, if you just do it within, something else is already orchestrating what's happening, and you're playing your part, and you are doing the best thing you can by just doing what you can do.
Well, let's put it this way, and I love what you're saying. And again, the path, it's not even about moving along the path. It's just continuing to move, to grow, to expand, to keep moving, and don't worry if it's on your path or not. But what's more important is that if you think by organizing a plan we can beat, if you believe in these conspiracy theories or whatever, there's this like cabal or a very organized business force on the other end, there's no way you're going to be more organized than them. There's no way you're going to make up a better plan than them. There's no way we're going to be able to come up with something. But it doesn't mean we cannot change and create a shift energetically. It doesn't mean that we cannot bring more love into this world, raise the vibration, and maybe, just maybe, if enough of us, tap into this frequency of like love and harmony and manifest that, maybe people within those systems will shift as well. Maybe people within the systems, it's like, hacking the code of creating a shift within that by just raising the vibration. And it feels like, if you look at it from a bird's eye view or from, 1,000 feet up, and you're looking, it's like, hey, is someone trying to suppress a transformation globally right now that's about to sort of happen? Like maybe they know something's underway where like people are shifting and waking up, they're doing everything they can to pump the fear because there's no way they can stop this wave. And if that's the only way through, then yeah, we should be trying to raise our vibration, to love as much as possible, to spread that, because eventually that will break through anything, in my opinion, even if you have to die for that. Even if you have to go all the way to say, yes, what I mean? I believe this and I'm going to stick with it all the way and not succumb to fear. I think that's how the shift happens. I think that's how we really transcend everything, not from trying to figure it out up here, by embodying it and like just expanding it through here.
Dude, yeah. I love that.
And I think these systems too, because I'm always somebody, I don't know, it's just like so within my, I don't know, an archetype or whatever. But like, I always think so much about design, and I think it's always, micro and macro, right? So the micro is the individual things we can do on a day-to-day that we have control over, right? Our diet or exercise, our meditative practice, community. And I was actually just putting this on the Discord on the solutions channel for people to go check out. But also the macro, I'm a firm believer in we can design systems with this philosophy built in, right? Where it's systems built around, this sounds really kind of corny, but love-based systems versus fear-based systems, right? It's systems where you're designing with freedom in mind, as well as empathy, all these concepts that we're talking about and these principles that we should embody. I think the systems, just like set and setting, when you take psychedelics, if you have the right people and they're in the right mindset, it makes the experience that much more powerful and beautiful versus vice versa, right? And so, I don't know. Do you see any certain systems that resonate with you in particular at this time, or is it always just very malleable to anything that stands out? Is there anything
Absolutely.
in particular?
So when I talk about like surrendering to life, it's not about like giving up and saying, hey, the universe, because I get this a lot. Oh, the universe did this, or this is because of the universe. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in fully blaming everything on something external. I believe in taking inspired action, to being inspired to create, to being inspired to bring things in, but from a place of love, from a place of creation. When you tap into that source, you feel it flowing through you. You almost feel like, hey, I can do anything. You feel inspired. And if more people can be into that, sustainability, sustainable energy, sustainable living, like a lot of things in Ungrip, but like, evolved to like modern times, like having a sustainable house unit that is off grid, that provides you with food, that provides you with shelter, which means I don't need to tap into anything. I can live my life without having to depend on anything outside of myself. So I can spend my time focusing on creating cool technology, from creating, maybe programs that benefit humanity, rather than trying to survive and having this scarcity mindset. So I do believe there's tons of room for that, and more art and more music and more experiences, rather than these monotonous jobs and labor. So I do believe in all that. And I don't believe it's just like, hey, let's let go and just focus on love, everything, and like things are just going to happen. Like it's not that. It's like, yes, make that the basis, but take inspired action, do things.
Right.
Well, I think where you can bring your friends in and like have circles or like groups where people come together, just be with each other.
Well, I think you can see where in the 70s you saw a lot of that with the hippie movement, and my parents, were part of this, and I've learned a lot where I saw so much of the love and that side to it, but then I saw how it was co-opted, and it was taken over by whether it was corporatism or just the CIA from behind the scenes doing, a lot of real messed up skullduggery from what we've found out, the more we've read, people's work like Talbot, and Forte was on our podcast and broke it down. But it's this idea of like, when people go to Burning Man, they're like, wait, why can't we do this in 365 day to day, guys. You know, that's where all these concepts from Ubuntu to Zeitgeist, all these things, a lot of them, they manifest. And it's like everyone, I think it's always there. The key is in implementation, right? And how do we get this implemented? Well, we need the people and these systems and the people in place to start becoming more open to this implementation, right? The solutions exist. The key is getting them implemented. So we need more and more people in the system to allow the implementation.
Yeah, I hear that. I've recently come to the conclusion that the duality of Earth is always going to be duality. It's going to be the sliding scale of really dark, getting to the edge of darkness, and then coming all the way back, getting to the edge of lightness, because I think we're here to sort of evolve spiritually. And like maybe the next thing is like, hey, once you've gone through this enough where you start like detaching from all that sort of duality, and you can show that you can do it, then you're ready for something else. Maybe it's even harder, I hope not, but maybe it's more like just chill and like enjoy. But I think Alan Watts talked about the vibration, and like without the bottom of the vibration, you can't see the top of the vibration. You can't experience it. You know, there's no sort of juxtaposition. There's no sort of other point where it's just all the same. And that will kind of get boring too, I think. You know, like it wouldn't
stagnation.
It would just be too stagnant, you know, like, you know, imagine you had all the most amazing food, sex, all the things you wanted all the time. What you think? What you think you would want? You know, after a while, you'd be like, "Hey, like this sucks. I need some like dark
creative friction." Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think that's always going to exist too. I'm with you there. It's just as we enter this new stage as a planet, and as we become more spacefaring, that's the tricky thing. That's interesting to me. As we say, what's this precipice point? I mean, what are we saying? Precipice. This precipice of technology and all these different things now coming to a head. The fourth industrial revolution, the fourth turning, all these different terms you hear in the sort of cultural zeitgeist. That I don't know, Ben. Do you want to jump in here? What do you feel as far as how are you approaching this? And as we're at this precipice, how do you look at it?
It's a little of one foot in several worlds, like, or each foot in a different world. By acknowledging the limitation of what my intellect can behold and my language can speak, a lot of the times, you know, between the physical reality and the imaginal realm, in a sense, I like, the way I approach this is I speak about what I'm called to speak about, and I don't make any bones about it. I don't apologize for it unless I feel like I overstepped or I violated. The fact that some people are getting anxiety by some of the topics that I bring up only makes me wish to connect deeper. It doesn't make me want to talk about that stuff more just to show I can. It makes me want to connect deeper, but also, you know, bring medicine. And I don't think we understand medicine because we don't understand health. We barely understand who we are or what reality is. And I think medicine oftentimes is paradoxical. You'll actually notice that a lot of poisons in the right dosage are also medicine. And so it's really the what, the when, and the why are we addressing certain issues at certain times. So like, as far as like this precipice point for the world, where we're headed as a planet, living an example that is almost like what Socrates and Plato said. I kind of feel the whole, if you've heard this before, if you believe everything and nothing at the same time, you'll find yourself to be not so emotionally, and I'm paraphrasing, not so emotionally invested in the outcome of either ideology, and therefore you're also prepared for anything. So it's holding the paradox, and that's why I say stepping in different worlds, because I love stepping in the art mystic world. Actually, the only thing I will even ever say I am is an artist, to not pigeonhole myself too much, and maybe an art mystic. So I love taking real action. Like Gordo, we make a lot of content. You know, we put out a lot of content on our YouTube channel. I'm constantly staying busy, connecting with people and following the footsteps that I feel that are laying themselves out in front of me. So when I travel and I meet new people, I don't look at anything as being like, well, that was completely pointless to my day. You know, I never look at anything that happens with any minute or millisecond of my day as being pointless, especially if it stands out to me. If I have the wherewithal to make a comment on it, there's probably a reason for it. So I believe that most people think they know a little bit more than they actually know about what's happening in the world, about who they are, about the magic that could happen when you surrender some of the outcome of what you're trying to do in the world and allow for the rapture and the fear and the awe that seems to happen, you know, all of it at the same time, even the fear, when real change is happening. So I'm here for the catalyst. I'm here for that thing that helps change happen when I feel things getting stuck. And I feel people are getting rigid and stuck, and I don't blame anybody. I also notice it in myself. So I say thank you for all of it. But really, I guess that's my way, is trying to be an example of a human who can go through that. And I'll just give one more example. I was just on the Aubrey Marcus podcast, and, you know, I was just saying, dude, it's so easy making a film about you because you speak very well to your transformation process, which I think a lot of people need to go through. We need to enter ourselves into our own rites of passage, if you will. And he was like, dude, thank you for saying that, man. I hope I'm doing a good job. I don't have it all figured out. And I guess the audience gets to see me going through a lot of my shit and a lot of my dirty laundry. And I'm like, dude, this is no diss to Eckhart Tolle, you know, or Tolle, or however you want to say it. But he kind of comes to you as this completed package. He can talk about his old life, but you don't see any of his old life in him. You just see this guy that's like, I'm here and now. And that's great. That's beautiful. But there are people who are like, that doesn't feel relatable. But Aubrey is right now going through that crap. And I can see how he can be honest about it. He can put language to it. He can let his community and his friends come and support him. He can go and do some of the scariest things in the world, but not just to be crazy and extreme, but to actually crack through the rigid shell that the conditioning of his past life has put him into. Like, we need more examples of people who are humble enough to say, man, like back in the day, I would have thought of myself as being a complete screw up. But now I can see with humility that my greatest gift is just being honest. So I get to use this YouTube channel to show that I'm a human on the path. If any of it is useful, awesome. If it's not and it's causing you anxiety, email me and I'll tell you which episodes to not watch, right? You know, but the bottom line is I am like you, Gio, and I believe the same thing as you, Gordo, that I'm here to bring as much goodness as possible because I just feel love. I don't even, it goes without saying that I love you guys. I love everyone who's showing up on the chat. I love the people who challenge me that I used to call enemies or, you know, the biggest obstacles to my freedom. But I don't even have to say who I love. I'm in love all the time. Damn, am I stressed out with 3 kids at home, 2 in diapers, you know, but the stress, I see it as a teacher. I allow myself to see it as a teacher. I'm no longer like, I need to fix whatever this is and change the arrangement of it so I can feel more convenient. Like, no, Ben, rise to the occasion. And the more I do it, the more I realize, you were almost saying, Terrence said, the nature rewards bravery. It also rewards when you just listen to your heart. Somebody, I think it was Kensho Falcon, and said, like, you know, the universe is giving you guidance through your heart, and if you listen to it more, it will get more clear. Its language will get more clear. So honor it. Stop denying your intuition. Stop denying your intuition by feeling like you need to outsource to Google, you know, or some fact checker, everything that you believe. Like, some things you're allowed to believe it, even if you can't explain it. You're allowed. It's okay. And it's okay for people to challenge you. And this is all what we would call a demented expression of love, but we don't know how love is supposed to show up in our lives to crack us out of the conditioned zoo animal we've become.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
I'm curious, do you guys have any tips on how people can be less defensive and surrender without psychedelics, using psychedelics? So I think that's a critical thing, kind of the main pragmatic takeaway from this.
Breath work and fasting. Gio, go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's perfect transition. There we go.
Slowing down your breathing in general will take you out of a stress state. And most people are reactive because they're stressed and they're over breathing. So they're always in this like fight or flight mode. So then they become reactive. So number one is just starting to be aware of your emotions. And whenever you feel emotions coming up, take a pause and just breathe and say, okay, what is this emotion trying to show me? Because they're all there for you, trying to teach you something about yourself. So that's number one.
And we can pull up your site here to show as well, Gio.
Yeah, elementalrhythm.com. We have some courses and some breath work and some experiential tracks where you can guide and breathe. But for me, outside of psychedelics, it's more self-awareness, just really being aware of the times when you feel those feelings coming on and just trying to pinpoint like what's at the root of it. And it all comes from somewhere deep in your mind where you feel insecure, unsafe, or you were hurt. And so this mind is trying to protect you and saying, okay, like getting angry will protect you because we're going to stop this from happening, or being anxious or closing off, fight or flight, like freezing, pulling away. The nervous system is designed over millions of years to keep you safe, and even the mind as well. So, being defensive, it's for me, it's like just being aware when it happens, changing your breathing pattern, just slowing down your breath, taking a breath and just bringing awareness. So not trying to suppress it, not trying to make it go away, to really like look at it. Where is this coming from? Why am I feeling this way? What was it about this person that made me get angry? What did they say that made me get defensive? And how do I know that that's true? So that's like in a very high level where I would start. And sometimes just doing like deeper breathing sessions, these things will come out of you. Like you have these breakthroughs. You'll do a deep breathwork session and you have a release, and the emotions might come out as anger, fear, laughter, sadness. So the more we allow ourselves to process, sometimes movement, shaking, being in nature, getting out of an environment that makes you feel stressed is so important. Getting your feet on the ground, grounding, all these very simple ancient practices, taking cold showers, ice bath, sauna, anything that will reduce the stress hormones in the body is going to help you to be less reactive and getting good sleep in a dark environment away from Wi-Fi if you can. Those are just some very basic stuff that made a huge change for me in my life.
That's super cool. I definitely like the slowing down your breathing part. There's something very beautiful that we can all learn, that is the greatest helpers are close to us, so close to us, and free. And they're so close and so free that we forget about them. We pass them over because of the, I would say, what do you call it? The reticular activating system, or the Raphine nuclei, which are the detectors in the back of your brain that go off when you experience novelty. You notice how, like, when something's walking through the woods, even if it's super complex, if you just give yourself like broad focus, you can see something moving, even if it's very tiny. You're wired to connect with your environment that way. And I feel like that's the same thing that we do sometimes when we overlook that breath is one of our greatest tools. It is literally the interface between us and our nervous system. And Wim Hof shows us that. But not only Wim Hof, like people like yourself and other people who are stepping up to the plate and being like, you know what? You don't have to have 10 years of university under your belt to guide somebody safely through a breathwork experience. And also, the short amount of time that you do it will also teach you so much as a facilitator. And I know that there's a lot of people that are like, oh my, everyone's a guru now, everyone's becoming a shaman. And I'm like, well, that's your way of framing it. I think a lot of people are stepping up to the plate in ways they never knew how before. And they're only using the language of shaman or guide or whatever it might be because of a lack of there being more language to use that suits your liking. So to me, I feel like let's have more of it. Let's have more people talking about this kind of stuff.
That's what we decided to do. We teach people in a weekend plus like 6 calls how to facilitate a breathwork experience. And it's been the most fulfilling experience of my life, because getting other people to share the experience with other people and having these amazing deep connection. Like, you facilitate a breathwork experience for people, you're connected for life. Same way you would be in an ayahuasca ceremony. When you go deep, it happens, and there's this amazing connection, and anyone can do it. And the first thing is just work on your own breath. So if everyone out there just wants to do this with me, all I just want you to do is just close your eyes and take a deep, slow breath into your nose. And as you exhale, just relax. Relax your face, your head, anywhere you feel tension. Just slowly exhale. Slow down your exhale. We'll do it one more time. Just take a deep, slow breath in into your belly if you can. And have an even slower exhale. We'll just do one last one. The third one is always the charm. Slow, deep breath into the nose. relaxing the body, just exhale slowly. Just feel your body just relax and come into a state of peace. Breathing through the nose activates the parasympathetic. Just slowing your breathing slows down the mind, slows down the body. With 3 breaths, you can feel yourself just starting to relax. It's that simple. Okay, so the homework for anyone listening this far, start breathing through your nose. If you have to tape your mouth shut at night, piece of tape works wonders. And just when you feel these feelings during the day, like anxiety amped up, just check in, how am I breathing right now? You'll notice probably shallow, maybe in your mouth, quick breaths. Slow it down and you feel everything come right back into presence.
You know what I love about that? Like even in 3 breaths, it simplifies everything. Like I check in with certain structural things, like how are my hips sitting on the chair? How's my spine doing? How relaxed is my belly? How relaxed are my shoulders? It's recalibrating in and of itself. When you just focus on the breath, there's something intrinsic in it that's just recalibrating by its very nature. And I find it amazing that you do Wim Hof breath. You know, most people, they don't realize when you put it this way, it's so simple, that you're only 50 breaths away from a psychedelic-like experience. Right. Or if you want to tone it back, 50 slower but full breaths away from like a deeply moving, even emotional release. And like it's just about without fail. If you do the breaths, it'll happen. You know, if you do the breaths, if you execute it the right way. So most people think like I have to train for years and years to like 50 breaths.
Just step out the door, Frodo. Just go for it.
20 breaths.
Leave the Shire.
Just leave it. Leave the Shire. Just any breath work. Any of them.
Well, I think that's a beautiful way to wrap, Gio. I saw you got a class actually, speaking of breath work, you're going to be teaching here coming up. So if anybody does want to work with Gio, please reach out to him. This is amazing. I really enjoyed this one.
Thank you. Like as we said, it could have went anywhere. There's so many more things I would love to talk about, but we can save that. We'll have it on my podcast. Yeah. Okay.
Well, cool. For sure. We'll get you back. I definitely want the audience to hear the story of the fast. Let that be the cliffhanger.
All right. All right.
So, by the way, man, everyone in the chat was really appreciating not just what you had to say, but just your manner of delivery. Is so obvious. It's so obvious that you do the work. And so thank you for that. And I love conversations like this, man. Like as much as it was very broad what we were talking about, like the way that those broad topics root down into a reconfiguration of what we're actually experiencing here with life. It's very humbling and refreshing to hear things put the way that you put them. So I appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, like everything in the show notes, you'll be able to find Gio. But if there's anything that you didn't send to us, let us know now if there's a way for you or for people to get in touch with you.
Yeah, Instagram, Elemental Geo, elementalrhythm.com. Just send an email through there to reach me one way or the other. And if you're in Toronto, come check us out at our studio at Elemental Wellness Center up in Vaughan. And yeah, just keep it simple. You know, doesn't be too crazy. Breathe. And thank you for the opportunity to come on here and share. And for all those listening, I really appreciate that. And again, just to close, like the best way to change the world is to just keep working on yourself. And I'm not the first one. I don't take credit for that. But when I heard it the first time, it resonated with me. And I said, okay, like this is what I'm going to do. I can do that. Right? I can control that in a way, or not control it, or just embody it. So any little thing you do, it makes a difference. So keep up the work.
Beautiful. I'm going to make t-shirts that say that you took that quote for yourself.
All right.
I'll have some in the mail to you soon.
I love it.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this is always so much fun. Honestly, I said it in the chat, but I was like, I really want to thank you all. Like even the people who just constantly, they're sitting there in the chat room, just echoing deeper reverberations of what we're talking about here in their own words. This is exactly what we need more of, is with these things, like echo it in your own words. Feel how it feels when you allow it to become your language as well. And yeah, you know, open yourself up to the fact that something beautiful is also happening on the planet right now. I like that was a big theme of today. So Gordo, thank you for you. Always doing you over there in the corner.
Thank you so much, Gordo. Yeah, amazing.
My pleasure, guys. Stu and me.
All right. Yeah. So every single Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern, we are here. Thank you guys for always coming back, and I'll catch you guys next time on the Ben Stewart Podcast.
Peace. Thank you.